I never thought it would come to this, but sometimes life has a way of unraveling when you least expect it. A few months ago, I found myself sitting in the kitchen, staring at a note I'd just written. The ink was fresh, the words cold, and the weight of them hung heavily in the air. It was a simple note, but one that I never thought I'd write to my wife. It read, "Find someone else to support you." It all started when Julia came home late that night, later than usual. She didn't apologize. "No, sorry I'm late," or "work ran late." She simply walked through the door, as if it was just another normal evening. But I knew it wasn't. The shift had been subtle at first. I could feel it, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Julia had always been the type to keep busy, to thrive in the chaos of her career. She was ambitious, driven, and I admired that about her. But lately, there was something in the air that made me uneasy. It wasn't just that she had been working late more often. It was that she was becoming increasingly distant. I noticed it in her eyes, in her body language. She wasn't as present anymore. At first, I told myself it was work stress. Everyone goes through phases, right? But then the little things started adding up. She'd leave her phone unattended, but then quickly grab it the moment I walked into the room. Her responses were short, as if she was losing interest in the conversations we used to have. She'd cancel plans with me, promising she was tired or had too much to do. But what really set me off was the evening I found myself sitting in our living room, the light from the TV flickering across my face. It was 11 p.m., and she hadn't called me. She had told me she was going to dinner with a colleague, but as the hours passed, my mind began to wander. I sat there, looking at my phone, my chest tight with anticipation. It wasn't like her to stay out this late without a word. I tried texting her. "Hey, are you okay?" I sent. No reply. I waited. A few more minutes went by, and I checked the time. 11:45 p.m. The buzzing of my phone startled me. It was her. But when I opened the message, I was met with something that felt more like a brush-off than an answer. "I'm fine. Just wrapping up now. I'll be home soon." I felt something shift. A sense of foreboding settled in. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but a nagging voice in my head couldn't be quieted. I couldn't remember the last time she'd stayed out this late. I couldn't remember the last time she'd told me nothing about her day. And then, as if on cue, she walked in at 12:30 a.m. Her makeup was smeared, her hair slightly out of place. She didn't seem flustered at all, just tired. But I noticed it immediately, her scent. It was different. It wasn't her usual perfume. "Long night?" I asked, trying to sound casual. I hated myself for feeling the way I did, but I couldn't stop it. She shrugged, setting her purse down on the table. "Yeah, just a late dinner. Nothing special." She moved past me, heading straight for the bathroom without another word. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't just her lateness. It wasn't even the odd perfume that wasn't hers. It was the way she had looked at me, as if she was hoping I wouldn't ask, hoping I wouldn't notice. I waited. The bathroom door closed behind her, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the silence between us stretch too long, too thick. She had always been open with me, but tonight, it was different. There was a wall that had appeared out of nowhere, and it terrified me. As the minutes ticked by, I sat in the darkness, my mind racing. I couldn't just let this go. I couldn't ignore the doubt creeping in. When she finally came out, I had made up my mind. "You were with someone tonight," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She froze. For a moment, I thought she might deny it, but instead, she just stood there. There was no anger, no defensiveness, just silence. "Who was he?" I asked, feeling the words burn as they left my mouth. Her eyes flickered to mine, but she didn't speak. And then, without another word, I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I grabbed a piece of paper, a pen, and wrote down the only thing I could think of. I didn't know what else to do. "Find someone else to support you." I left it on the kitchen counter. She didn't ask me about it. She didn't say anything at all. I don't even know why I did it. I think part of me just wanted her to realize that this wasn't just about her actions anymore. It was about me, too. And as I walked out of the room that night, I couldn't help but wonder if I had just set the course for everything to fall apart. The following morning, I woke up with a gnawing feeling in my gut. I hadn't slept well at all, not that night or the night before. The note I had left was still sitting on the kitchen counter, like some kind of unspeakable truth. It wasn't just the words that weighed on me. It was the moment when I had written them. My hand had shaken slightly, as if I knew, deep down, that once I'd written that note, there would be no going back. The finality of it felt almost suffocating. I was already up when Julia came down the stairs, her eyes still puffy from sleep. Her face seemed unreadable, but there was something different in the way she looked at me. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was something else, but the space between us felt like it was stretching by the second. She walked into the kitchen, standing by the counter. She didn't even glance at the note, but I knew she had seen it. The way she moved, the way she avoided my gaze, there was no doubt. But she didn't bring it up. She just grabbed a cup from the cupboard, as if everything was normal, as if nothing had changed. I couldn't stand the silence anymore. "You saw the note," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but it came out more shaky than I wanted. Julia didn't answer right away. She poured her coffee slowly, like it was the most important thing she had to do in that moment. It wasn't until the mug was set down in front of her that she looked at me, her eyes searching mine. "I saw it," she replied quietly, her voice almost apologetic. "What do you want me to say?" That was the moment I realized. She wasn't going to fight it. She wasn't going to deny it. She wasn't even going to try to cover it up. The realization hit me harder than I expected. All those doubts, all those little things I'd been ignoring for months, had finally caught up to me. This wasn't some misunderstanding. It wasn't a miscommunication. Julia had crossed a line, and now there was no pretending otherwise. I took a deep breath, trying to hold on to some semblance of control. "What happened, Julia?" I asked, my voice more calm than I felt. "Who is he?" Her eyes darkened for a moment, but then she looked away, staring out the kitchen window. The silence dragged on between us, and for a long time, I thought she wouldn't answer at all. The air felt thick, like it was pressing in on me from all sides. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not what you think." Those words, so simple, yet so loaded with meaning, hit me like a slap. I could feel the tension building, coiling in my chest. My fists clenched, but I forced myself to stay still, to stay calm. "Then tell me what it is, Julia," I demanded. "Because right now, it looks like you've been hiding something from me for months." She didn't flinch at my words, but I could see the way her shoulders tensed, the way her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her coffee cup. "It's complicated," she said, her voice low and hesitant. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "Complicated," I repeated, my heart pounding. "How is this complicated, Julia? You've been seeing someone else. That's not complicated. That's cheating." Her eyes welled up with tears, and for the first time in a long time, I saw her vulnerability. It was as if she was standing on the edge of something, caught between guilt and fear. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I could feel the weight of her emotions pressing against me, and it took everything in me not to lash out. "I was lonely, okay?" she finally blurted out, her voice cracking. "I was feeling lost. I don't know how it happened, but it did. I never wanted to hurt you." I wanted to say something. I wanted to scream, to accuse her of everything that had been building up inside me for months. But instead, I just stood there, staring at her. There was so much I wanted to ask, so much I needed to know. But in that moment, I felt utterly defeated. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Since February," she replied, her eyes now locked on the floor. "I met him at work, and things just happened. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice barely holding together. "Why didn't you come to me?" "I don't know," she admitted softly. "I kept hoping I could fix it on my own, that it would just go away. But it didn't. And now everything is falling apart." I could feel my heart breaking, piece by piece. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was just numb. There was a strange sense of disbelief that kept swirling in my mind. It was hard to accept, hard to grasp that the woman I had shared my life with, the woman I trusted above all else, had betrayed me in such a profound way. For the rest of the morning, we didn't speak much. Julia went to work, her face pale, her movements slow. I didn't stop her. Part of me wanted to demand more answers, to drag the truth out of her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. It wasn't until she left that I finally allowed myself to breathe. I stood in the empty house, staring at the walls, feeling a rush of emotions that I didn't know how to process. I was angry, devastated, confused, but mostly, I was just lost. As I looked down at the note I had written, the one I left for her just hours before, I realized something. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was about everything we had built together, the trust, the connection, the life we had shared. And now, in one instant, it felt like it was all slipping away. The days after Julia's confession felt like a fog, heavy and suffocating. Every moment, every word, every glance felt like it carried some kind of weight I couldn't shake. I tried to act normal, tried to pretend like I was okay. But nothing felt right. Nothing was right. Julia went to work as usual. She acted like nothing had changed, as if the conversation we had that morning hadn't just cracked our entire world wide open. Her eyes were still the same dull look that I'd noticed creeping in over the past few months. But now it was different. Now, it wasn't just tiredness, it was guilt. There was a shadow in her eyes that I couldn't ignore. I didn't want to face her. I didn't want to see her for what she had become. But I had no choice. We lived in the same house, after all. So I spent my days pacing, trying to distract myself with work, with anything I could focus on that wasn't her. That wasn't the growing rift between us. It wasn't until the third day after the revelation that I made up my mind. I couldn't let this continue. I couldn't just keep walking around in this limbo, unsure of what to do, unsure of what she felt, unsure of how to fix things, or if they could even be fixed at all. The only thing that was clear was that I was drowning, and I had no idea how to swim out of this mess. That night, when she came home, I asked her to sit down. My heart was pounding. I was about to do something I wasn't sure I could handle. But I had to. There was no more pretending. Julia, I began, my voice cold, controlled, but with a tremor I couldn't hide. I need to know more. I need to understand what this is. What you've done. Who he is. She looked at me, a flicker of panic flashing across her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but then closed it again, as if searching for the right words. Or maybe just the courage to say them. I wasn't sure. But what I did know was that there was more to the story. There had to be. I crossed the room, the tension thick in the air between us. I've spent days thinking about this, trying to figure out how I didn't see it sooner. How you could hide something like this from me. I need answers, Julia. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending like everything is okay when it's not. She swallowed, clearly struggling with her own emotions. For the first time since this whole thing started, she looked vulnerable. And in that moment, I almost wanted to give her an out, to tell her that we could figure it out together. But I couldn't. Not anymore. The trust was gone, and I needed to know how far this had gone. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. His name is Ben. He's just someone I met through work. I didn't plan for it to happen, but it did. It started innocently enough, just conversations here and there. But then, her voice trailed off, and I could see the guilt weighing on her like an anchor. I nodded slowly, processing what she was saying. It felt like I was suffocating with every word. But you didn't just talk, did you? You didn't just have some innocent conversations. You went behind my back. You let this thing grow into something more. How could you, Julia? I asked, my voice growing harder with each sentence. How could you betray me like that? She flinched at my words, and for a moment, I regretted the harshness of my tone. But I didn't take it back. Not when the hurt was this deep. I'm sorry, she said, her voice trembling now. I didn't mean for it to happen. I don't know what I was thinking. It felt like he understood me in a way that you didn't. I was lost, and I didn't know who to talk to. And then, it just became more than I could control. I felt a sickening wave of nausea rise in my chest. It wasn't just the affair that hurt. It wasn't just the fact that she'd been seeing someone behind my back. It was the emotional betrayal. She was right there, telling me that I wasn't enough for her. That the connection we shared, the life we built together, wasn't enough to keep her from seeking out someone else. The silence stretched between us, and I could hear the ticking of the clock in the background, each second dragging on like a knife twisting deeper into me. Do you love him? I asked, my voice barely audible, as if I was afraid to hear the answer. She shook her head quickly, as though to convince herself as much as me. No, I don't love him. I swear. But I care about him. I didn't want it to happen, but I don't know. He made me feel important again. Like I mattered. It felt like the world had shifted beneath my feet. She wasn't in love with him, but she had felt something. Something enough to risk everything. And that was worse than anything else. The idea that she had fallen into someone else's arms because of some emptiness inside of her, some void that she thought he could fill, that stung more than I was prepared for. I took a step back, my chest tightening. I don't know if I can do this anymore, Julia. I whispered, more to myself than to her. I don't know if I can trust you again. She reached for me, but I stepped away. It wasn't that I didn't want her to touch me. It was that I couldn't let her. Not yet. Not with all this between us. I don't know either, she said, her voice breaking. I don't know if we can fix this, but I'm willing to try. I'll do whatever it takes. Please, just give me a chance. But I wasn't sure anymore if I had it in me to give her that chance. The doubt, the betrayal, the hurt, it had all piled up so high that I wasn't sure we could rebuild. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to try anymore. I turned away, walking out of the room, the weight of her words echoing in my mind. I'll do whatever it takes. But what if that wasn't enough? What if the damage was too deep to repair? The days after that conversation with Julia felt like I was living in a parallel universe, a world where nothing made sense, yet everything felt far too real to ignore. I kept telling myself that I was doing the right thing by giving her space, by stepping back and letting her figure out her next move. But it wasn't that easy. Every moment I spent alone felt like a constant reminder of what I had lost. I kept hearing her words in my head. I didn't want it to happen, yet it did. It happened, and that was the problem. How could something like this just be brushed off? How could something so monumental just fade into the background of our lives? Every time I thought I could move forward, a memory would hit me. The little things, the way she used to smile when she saw me after a long day, the way she would curl up next to me on the couch, or how her laugh used to fill the silence in our home. I kept asking myself, where did that woman go? It wasn't just the affair, it was everything that led up to it. The distance, the subtle hints that something was wrong, the times when she would withdraw into herself instead of confiding in me. I kept asking myself, was I blind to all of this? But the truth was, I wasn't blind. I was just too afraid to see it. Too afraid to admit that the woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew, was changing in ways I couldn't understand. And that scared me more than anything else. Julia and I spoke a few times over the next few days, but the conversations were strained, uncomfortable, like we were speaking a language neither of us fully understood. She kept apologizing, telling me she was sorry for everything, and that she was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. But I wasn't sure that was enough anymore. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being manipulated. It wasn't just that she'd had an affair, it was that she seemed to want to control how I felt about it. She wanted me to be the forgiving husband, the one who could sweep everything under the rug and pretend like nothing had changed. But I wasn't sure I could do that. One evening, a week after our conversation, I found myself standing in the living room, staring out the window. The streetlights flickered in the distance, casting long shadows across the empty streets. It was quiet. Too quiet. Julia had gone out with her coworkers again. She told me she needed time to clear her head, and I told myself I was fine with that. But I wasn't. Every time she left, I felt like I was losing more of her. It was like watching someone you love slowly fade away, and you can't do anything to stop it. I sat down on the couch, my mind racing. I couldn't go on like this, waiting for her to come back, waiting for her to decide what she wanted. So I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my best friend Noah. We hadn't spoken much lately, but I knew he would tell me the truth. I needed that. I needed to hear someone else's perspective on everything that was happening, because I couldn't trust myself anymore. Noah picked up on the second ring. Hey man, what's up? His voice was familiar, comforting. I didn't know where to begin. I don't know what to do, Noah. I think I'm losing her. The words came out before I could stop them. He was quiet for a moment, then spoke slowly. Look, I've known you for a long time, and I've seen you with Julia. I've seen how you two are with each other. You've always been a good match. But, man, something's off. You know it. She knows it. And the longer you both sit in this limbo, the harder it's going to get to fix it. You've got to decide what you want. If you want her back, if you think you can trust her again, you need to be honest with yourself. You can't keep walking on eggshells. His words hit me harder than I expected. I knew what he was saying was true. I couldn't keep pretending that I didn't have to make a choice. I had been so focused on the pain, on the betrayal, that I hadn't stopped to think about what I wanted. Thanks, Noah, I said quietly. I needed to hear that. I hung up the phone, sitting in the silence once again. My mind raced, but now it was different. It wasn't just a whirlwind of pain and confusion. It was a series of questions that demanded answers. Could I trust her again? Could I ever look at her the same way after what she had done? Or was it time to walk away? When Julia came home that night, she was different. She didn't apologize again, didn't bring up the affair. She seemed calm, almost too calm. She sat down across from me, and for the first time in days, we just stared at each other. "What are we doing, Julia?" I asked, my voice low. "What is this? What are we doing with our lives?" She took a deep breath, her eyes searching mine. "I don't know, but I'm trying. I swear I am. I don't know how to make it right. I don't know how to fix what I've broken." Her voice was so raw, so filled with regret, that I almost felt guilty for the anger I had been holding on to. Almost. But then I remembered the trust she had shattered, the promises she had broken. "I don't know if you can fix it, Julia," I said, the words heavy in my chest. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again. But maybe we can figure this out. Maybe, if we're both honest. But I can't keep pretending like nothing happened." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I know. I'll do whatever it takes. I just need you to give me a chance. I swear, I won't make the same mistake again." But I wasn't sure anymore if I believed her. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to believe her. As I sat there, staring at the woman I thought I knew, I realized something. It wasn't just about forgiveness anymore. It was about me. It was about my choice. My life. And I had to decide whether or not I wanted her to be a part of it. I didn't sleep much that night. My mind was a whirlwind, spinning with possibilities, regrets, and what-ifs. Julia's tear-filled eyes still haunted me, but the truth was, her tears were no longer enough to erase the hurt. She had hurt me in ways that words couldn't fully describe. I kept playing the scenes over in my head. The late nights, the unanswered texts, her sudden distance. It all added up to one painful truth. She had stopped fighting for us a long time ago. But there was still a part of me that wanted to fight for us, to fight for what we had before everything went to hell. Was that hope? Or was it just the fear of being alone? I wasn't sure anymore. The next day, Julia came home early. She told me she wanted to talk. She was standing at the door when I came back from work, her face looking pale, but determined. The same face she wore when she made big decisions, when she decided she was going to take control of something. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said last night," she began, her voice tentative. "I know I can't undo what I've done, but I want to try. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." The words, the same ones she had used before, felt different now. They didn't offer the same comfort they had in the past. This time, I couldn't simply accept them as part of the routine. I couldn't let her off the hook with another round of empty promises. "Do you even understand what you've done?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but it trembled. "Do you understand how much this hurts? How much you've shattered between us?" "I don't know if trying is enough anymore, Julia." Her face fell, but she didn't look away. Instead, she stepped closer, as if testing the waters, hoping I would allow her to close the gap between us. "I understand," she said, her voice breaking. "I do. And I know it's going to take more than just words. It's going to take time. But please, let me show you. Let me prove to you that I'm willing to change." I stared at her for a long moment, weighing my options. The words "let me prove it" echoed in my mind, but they didn't sound like they held any real substance anymore. In fact, they sounded hollow. How could she prove something that had already been broken? How could she show me she was still the woman I once knew, the woman I had trusted with everything, when I wasn't even sure who she was anymore? "I don't know if I can trust you again, Julia," I finally said, the weight of those words heavier than I expected. "I want to, but I don't know if I can. What we had, I don't know if I can get that back." She dropped her gaze, her lips trembling. I saw the guilt in her eyes, but it wasn't enough. Not anymore. It wasn't enough for me to simply forgive and forget. It wasn't enough to pretend that this was a mistake we could just sweep under the rug. This was real. The trust was gone, and it wasn't something you could rebuild overnight. Not in a day, not in a week. And even though part of me wanted to believe her, part of me wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was telling the truth, another part of me knew that this was something irreversible. I backed away slowly, shaking my head. "I can't do this right now. I can't even look at you the same way." Her face crumpled, the tears falling faster now. "Please, don't say that. Please, don't walk away. I need you. I can't fix this without you." But it wasn't about fixing it anymore. It wasn't about her making promises or begging for another chance. It was about me. It was about how much I could handle, how much I was willing to forgive. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I could handle this. I left the house that evening. I didn't know where I was going, or even why I felt the need to leave, but I couldn't stay. I needed space to breathe, to think. I drove aimlessly, the night around me growing darker with every mile. As I sat in my car by the lake, staring out at the water, I thought about everything that had led us here. I thought about the person I had been when I first met Julia, so full of hope, so full of dreams about the life we'd build together. I thought about the person I was now, hollowed out by betrayal, unsure of everything I had once believed in. And yet, there was still a part of me that wanted to forgive her. It wasn't just love. I wasn't sure if it was love anymore. But it was comfort. It was the life we had built together, the home we shared, the memories that we had created. And the thought of losing all of that, it was terrifying. But was it worth holding on to? Was it worth trying to rebuild something that had already fallen apart? I didn't know the answer. When I finally returned home, Julia was sitting on the couch, her eyes swollen from crying. She didn't look up when I walked in, but I could feel her presence, the weight of her in the room. "I don't know what to do anymore, Julia," I said, my voice breaking. "I want to believe you. I want to believe that you can change. But I don't know if I can trust you again. And I don't know if I can keep living like this." She stood up slowly, walking toward me. Her hands shook as she reached out, as if unsure if she was allowed to touch me. "I don't know if I deserve your trust," she said softly. "But I'm asking you to give me a chance. Just a chance to prove that I can be the woman you married." I stood there, torn. Her words, so desperate, so raw, made something shift inside me. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to reach out and tell her that everything could be fixed, that we could start over and leave this all behind. But I knew it wasn't that simple. And as I stared at her, standing there in front of me, I realized something. This wasn't just about her. It was about me, too. I had to decide if I was willing to forgive, if I was willing to take that leap of faith again. And at that moment, I wasn't sure if I was ready. The days that followed were like walking on a tightrope, balancing between the desire to repair what had been broken and the fear that nothing could ever go back to the way it was. Julia was still there, still apologizing, still asking for another chance. But her words had become hollow to me. I wanted to believe her, I really did. I wanted to believe that everything could be fixed with time and effort, but every time I looked at her, I saw the betrayal. I couldn't escape it. Each day felt like a battle. When she was home, she tried so hard to show me that she was different. She cooked dinner, made small gestures, tried to engage in conversations like we used to. But it felt forced, like she was trying to prove something rather than just being herself. There were times when I could see the cracks in her facade, when her anxiety would slip through the cracks of her calm demeanor. It was like we were both pretending to be okay, waiting for the other person to believe it. But I couldn't pretend anymore. The more she tried to mend things, the more distant I felt. It wasn't just the affair anymore. It was the erosion of trust, the years of shared moments that were now tainted by what she had done. I started to question everything, even the good times we'd had together. Had they been real, or was it all just a lie? I spent more and more time alone. At night, when Julia was asleep, I would find myself staring at the ceiling, consumed by thoughts I couldn't escape. The questions kept piling up. Could I ever look at her the same way again? Could we rebuild something that was so thoroughly shattered? And if we couldn't, what was left? One afternoon, as I sat at my desk, the weight of everything pressing on my chest, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but for some reason, I picked it up. "Hello." A voice on the other end was familiar, but it sent a chill down my spine. "Is this Robert?" the voice asked. "I'm Ben. I think we need to talk." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Ben. The name felt like a knife to the chest. The man Julia had been seeing. The man who had stolen her attention, her affection. The man who had come into our lives like a ghost. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice low, the anger rising in my chest before I could stop it. "I think we need to clear the air," Ben said, his tone calm, but with an edge that made my blood run cold. "I don't want any trouble. I just think you deserve to know the truth. All of it." My grip on the phone tightened. "What truth?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "What could you possibly have to say to me?" "I don't want to get into the details over the phone," Ben said quickly, "but I think you need to hear it from me. We can meet. I'm not trying to cause any problems. I think you need to know everything." I paused. My heart was racing now, the anger, the confusion, everything swirling inside me. Why was he calling? What did he want? Was this just some sick attempt to justify his actions? Or was there something more to this? Something I wasn't seeing? Where? I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He gave me an address, a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. The kind of place where no one would bother you, where you could sit and talk without the pressure of being watched. The decision wasn't an easy one. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I knew I had to go. I had to hear his side, no matter how much it made me sick to my stomach. Maybe this was the closure I needed. Or maybe it was just a way for Ben to play his part in a twisted game. I didn't tell Julia. I didn't know how I would explain it. I didn't know how I would explain to her that I was going to meet the man who had torn our world apart. That evening, I drove to the cafe. The air outside was cold, the wind biting at my skin. I walked inside, the soft chime of the bell above the door ringing in my ears as I entered. The cafe was almost empty, save for a few people sitting at tables, lost in their own conversations. I spotted Ben right away. He was sitting in the back, his hands folded on the table, his eyes locked onto the door as if he was waiting for me. As I walked toward him, he stood up, his face unreadable. He was taller than I expected, his presence imposing, but there was something about him that felt off. Something in the way he looked at me, as though he was sizing me up, trying to figure out what I would do next. "Robert," he said, his voice smooth but carrying a note of tension. "Thanks for meeting me. I know this is probably not what you expected." I didn't respond at first. Instead, I sat down across from him, my eyes never leaving his face. "You've got 5 minutes," I said, my voice icy. "Tell me what you think I need to know." He nodded, clearly not fazed by my hostility. "All right. I'm not here to make excuses. I know what I did, and I'm not proud of it. But there are things you don't know. Things that Julia hasn't told you." My heart skipped a beat. My mind raced, 1,000 possibilities running through it. What could he be talking about? Was there something else? Something even worse than what I already knew? "Go on," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I never meant for this to happen," Ben said, his voice lowering. "But there was a lot more going on with Julia than she's let on. She wasn't just unhappy with you. There's more to it than that. She was in a really dark place. A place where, well, she wasn't sure who she was anymore. And I was just someone who came along at the right time." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "Are you trying to justify what you did?" I asked, my voice hard. "No," he said quickly, his eyes meeting mine. "I'm not. I'm just trying to explain that it wasn't about you. It wasn't about us. It was about her. And I think she's been lying to herself, Robert. Lying about who she is and what she really wants." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Could it be true? Was this all just a result of some deeper issue with Julia? Was I simply a part of the picture that no longer fit, a casualty of her own internal war? I didn't know how to react. The conversation felt like it was spiraling out of control. But one thing was clear. I wasn't just dealing with an affair. I was dealing with a woman who was lost, a woman who didn't know who she was or what she wanted. And now, I had a choice to make. The weight of Ben's words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I sat there, my mind racing, trying to process everything he had just said. It wasn't just the affair that was eating at me anymore. It was the idea that Julia might not even understand herself. She was lost, and I was just a casualty in that battle. I thought I had been the one in the dark, the one left in the wake of betrayal. But now it seemed like Julia's journey was far more complicated than I could have ever imagined. I stared at Ben, my emotions a whirlwind of anger and confusion. "So, you're telling me that she wasn't just cheating on me because of some connection she felt with you, but because she was lost? Because she didn't know who she was?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Ben didn't flinch, his eyes calm, like he had accepted that I would be angry, that I would be hurt. "I'm not trying to make excuses, Robert. I'm not even asking for your forgiveness," he said, his tone still calm, almost resigned. "I just think you deserve to know the whole story. She wasn't herself, and that's why everything fell apart. I'm not proud of what happened. I don't want to be the guy who ruined your life, but I was the one who was there when she needed someone to listen." The sting of his words cut deep. It wasn't just that Julia had cheated, it was that she had been looking for something else. Something inside of her was missing, and I hadn't even realized it until now. Maybe I had been too wrapped up in our routine, too focused on keeping the peace, to see the cracks in her that had been forming over time. I thought she was just tired. I thought it was work stress, or just the strain of life. But now I was hearing that it was much deeper than that. "So what now?" I asked, my voice hoarse, trying to push past the anger that still burned inside me. "Do you think this is your chance to step in and fix everything?" Do you think you can take my place in her life? Is that what you're telling me? Ben shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't back down. No, Robert. That's not what I'm saying. I don't want her to leave you. I don't want to be the hero here, and I don't think she's ever going to forget what she did to you. But I think she's trying to figure things out, and maybe you need to let her do that. Maybe you need to let her find herself before you make any decisions about your future together. His words felt like a slap, but I knew deep down there was some truth to them. Maybe Julia was lost. Maybe she was running from something deeper than I could ever understand. But that didn't change the fact that she had made a choice. And now, I was the one left picking up the pieces of a life that had been shattered. I didn't say anything else to Ben. I didn't need to hear more of his explanation. I knew where I stood now, both with him and with Julia. It was up to her to figure out who she was and what she wanted. But it was up to me whether or not I was going to stick around while she tried to find her way. I walked out of the cafe, the cold air hitting me like a shock to my system. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to clear my head. I couldn't go back to the house just yet. Not after everything that had happened. I drove aimlessly through the streets, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My thoughts were a mess. Ben's words kept echoing in my head. She was lost. She didn't know who she was. How was I supposed to move forward with that information? How was I supposed to even look at her the same way after knowing that she had been lying to herself this whole time? She wasn't just hiding things from me. She was hiding them from herself. Eventually, I ended up at a park, sitting in my car with the engine off, just staring out at the empty playground in the distance. I felt so alone in that moment. It wasn't just that Julia had cheated, it was that I didn't even know who she was anymore. The person I had married, the woman I thought I knew, had been swallowed by a version of herself I didn't recognize. And I couldn't figure out if I could bring her back, if I could still fight for a relationship with someone who had so thoroughly lost herself. But then, something shifted. I realized that it wasn't just about Julia. It wasn't just about her mistakes. It was about me, too. I had allowed myself to become a victim of this situation, to let my entire sense of self be tied up in her actions. I had spent so much time wondering how to fix things with her, how to piece us back together, that I had forgotten to ask myself what I wanted, what I needed. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the park. I sat there for what felt like hours, just thinking, weighing everything that had happened, everything that could happen. I thought about Ben and his call. I thought about the conversation Julia and I had in the kitchen, about the way she had cried and begged for forgiveness. And for the first time since all of this started, I realized something important. I couldn't keep making decisions based on what she needed. I couldn't keep trying to save a relationship that was drowning because I was afraid of being alone. I had to let go. The next few days were quiet, uncomfortable in their stillness. Julia tried reaching out, texting and calling, but I didn't pick up. I couldn't face her yet. Not when I was still so lost in my own feelings. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about everything that had led us to this point. Everything that had gone unsaid. Everything that had been ignored. And so, I took the time I needed. I spent days going through old pictures, sifting through memories of a life I thought I knew, but now seemed so distant. I started asking myself what I wanted out of my future, without her in it. Was I strong enough to walk away? Was I willing to cut ties with the woman I had loved for so long? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had to let her go. She was still searching for herself, still trying to figure out who she was. And as much as I loved her, I couldn't keep holding on to someone who didn't even know who they were anymore. I didn't know if I would ever be able to forgive her. I didn't know if we could ever go back to what we had. But I knew one thing for sure. I had to move forward. I had to reclaim my own life. So I made the hardest decision of my life. It had been weeks since I made the decision to take time for myself, to step away from the chaos that had consumed my life. There had been moments of silence between Julia and me, moments of profound reflection, and moments when I thought I might never find peace again. But as the days turned into weeks, something shifted inside me. I realized that I had spent so much time focusing on what I had lost, on what Julia had taken away, that I had forgotten to look at what I still had, my own life, my own future. And it was time to take that back. I began to rebuild, slowly, cautiously, but with purpose. I went back to the things I had once loved, the things that made me feel like myself again. I picked up old hobbies that had fallen by the wayside, reconnected with friends I had neglected, and even started exploring new interests that had always piqued my curiosity. It was as if I was relearning who I was without the shadow of doubt and betrayal hanging over me. One evening, as I sat on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I had made it through the storm. The pain wasn't gone, but it no longer controlled me. I had started to heal. It was then that my phone buzzed. It was a text from Julia. "I miss you. I understand if you don't want to talk, but I wanted you to know that I've been working on myself. I've been going to therapy and taking time to understand who I am, what I want, and what I've done wrong. I don't expect anything from you, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I will always care about you." I read the message, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anger or bitterness. Instead, I felt a strange sense of peace. Julia had taken the time to do what I had done, to figure out who she was and what she wanted. We had both been lost in different ways, but now, we were finding our own paths. It wasn't about fixing everything or going back to the way things were. It was about moving forward, separately, but with a sense of understanding. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't feel the need to. The old part of me, the part that wanted answers, the part that still felt the sting of betrayal, slowly faded into the background. I realized that what Julia and I had wasn't a failure. It was just a chapter that had come to an end. We were both learning, growing, and sometimes, the best way to love someone was to let them go. A few days later, I bumped into Julia at a cafe. We sat down together, not as the couple we once were, but as two people who had shared a part of their lives and were now moving in different directions. It wasn't awkward, and it wasn't painful. It was a quiet understanding between us. "I'm glad to see you're doing better," she said softly, her eyes filled with sincerity. I smiled. "Yeah, I'm getting there. It's been a journey, but I'm starting to feel like myself again." She nodded, her lips curling into a gentle smile. "I'm proud of you. You've always been strong, Robert, and I hope you know that I'll always wish you the best. You deserve to be happy." And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed that. I wasn't angry at her anymore. I wasn't angry at myself. I was just okay. I was finally okay with where I was, and with the fact that life didn't always go according to plan. I had learned that sometimes, the hardest part of moving forward is accepting the past and letting go. We stood up to leave, and as we walked out of the cafe, I realized something important. Life had a funny way of teaching you lessons. And sometimes, the lessons were the hardest ones to learn. But in the end, they made you stronger. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if Julia and I would ever reconnect in the way we once had. But I knew that I had taken control of my own life, and that was something no one could ever take away from me. And as I walked down the street, with the sun setting behind me, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. Sometimes, the hardest endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.